now.
Cool.
Yay.
Oh, I can hear myself coming. No, we're okay now.
Okay. Hi, lovely people. As Claire already wrote, we had a bit of tech issues getting started. We're trying a different setup now with Skype. I would be really grateful if you can hear me and see the lovely Marina and me in a little tiny square. If you could just send us a note, either Claire or Morris or anyone else who's watching, to let me know that this is actually working. Yay! It's working! Okay, great! Sorry for the delay, people. We'll make it up, I promise. It also might mean that you might get to meet some of my lovely family, because I told them I need 30 minutes without interruption. So if there's a baby coming in at some point, you'll meet our little one.
Bonus baby.
Bonus babies. Okay. Wonderful. Welcome to the very first edition of Making Stories Knits With, and a very, very warm welcome to our very dear and special guest, Marina. Hi, Marina. It's so lovely to see your face, and I wish I could hug you right now, but alas, not possible.
It's really nice. I could do with hugs.
Yeah, I think we all could, couldn't we? So let me talk a few seconds about what this new video format is, because it's the first time that we're actually coming to you on YouTube and not on interesting Instagram live stories that might include anything and everything from pattern features to me dancing in our kitchen. Okay, so apparently there are no moving pictures.
Oh.
Yeah, I think our frame rate is too low. Yeah. So guys, as long as you can hear us, I think we'll keep going. If you can't hear us anymore, let us know. I think it's just that my laptop isn't strong enough to transfer the Skype image. So yeah, it's the first time that we're doing this. I was expecting tech not to work properly. Marina, I'm really sorry about that, but you've been working with me for a while. You know how it is.
That's okay. I was expecting my tech to be the letdown, so.
Surprises. Okay, so Making Stories Knits With is our new YouTube live interview format, where we actually wanted to be knitting with you, so you could see Marina knitting and me knitting, and we would be chatting. Marina is knitting a very beautiful, I think it's a cardigan. We'll get into that later. And I have my project here as well, but well, you'll just have to imagine us knitting. I hope you're settled in somewhere cozy with a cup of tea or coffee, your current work in progress, and are ready to spend the next 25-30 minutes with us. With this new video format, what we aim to do is show you a little bit more of who we actually are at Making Stories, who we work with, and we're inviting people like Marina, who's our tech editor, designer, yarn dyer. We'll also get into that in a little bit. But we're also going to talk to other designers, yarn companies that we work with, community members as well, and we have a few really, really wonderful guests lined up. I will be going live every other Tuesday at 4 p.m. CET, and if you want to, you can also watch this video afterwards if you really liked it and you want to share it with someone. They're not going anywhere, they will stay on this YouTube channel, and obviously you can also hit subscribe, and I think you get a little notification then when we are about to go live. So enough about me, enough about us and about this video. Let's talk about and with Marina. Marina, do you want to say a few words about who you are and what you do, and maybe how we got to know each other?
Yeah, sure. My business is Marina Skua. My name is actually Marina Blackburn. Um, I'm, as you mentioned, a dyer, designer, and tech editor. I started dyeing yarn at the end of 2015, so I've been going for about 4 years now. And more recently, I've been focusing on designing knitting patterns as well. And a couple of years ago, at the end of 2017, I decided to quit my full-time job to focus on that creative work. And at the same time, I took on tech editing because previously I'd worked in publishing. So I was a production editor working on first children's books, then magazines. The magazines were business-to-business aviation ones, which is so irrelevant to anything in my life right now. But a lot of those skills transferred across to knitting patterns, some of the workflows, and a lot of the more sort of, obviously not the knitting related stuff, but a lot of the skills are similar. And so I started just working with independent designers. And then Hannah-Lisa, you were one of my early clients. I had got in contact with you because I was after a bit of coaching just to help me kick off my business and make sure that I was doing things as well as I could be. You entrusted me with a couple of your sock designs, and from there you approached me with the Making Stories and Friends collection in December 2018, was that?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And I've been tech editing for Making Stories ever since then, as well as still working with independent designers, still doing a lot of dyeing of yarn, and hopefully doing more and more designing because it's loads of fun and I really enjoy it.
Yay! Yeah, and we love working with you. I mean, otherwise, I think we would not be working with you anymore. So,
well, yeah. If I'd messed it up, I expect I would know by now.
Yeah. And I think you would probably agree if I say that tech editing a magazine adds a whole other level of complexity compared to editing individual patterns, because what we're after is not just making the individual patterns great, which you obviously do very well, but also to ensure the consistency across patterns within one collection, and then to add another level of complexity, ensure consistency across publications.
Yeah.
So we're very, very thankful that you continue working with us, even though sometimes it's a lot of work.
It is loads of work, but it's really good because, you know, I love being a part of the magazine. It's complete, like at the stage where I'm working on things, I don't have a great idea of what the magazine's actually going to look like. So when I actually see the photo shoot and the magazine itself, it's just like so perfect to have all of the pieces come together, to see, you know, the color schemes that have been chosen for the things that I've been working on and how everything fits as a collection. And that's so much fun. And the tech editing side of that is made so much easier by like the extensive resources that you guys have put together. So they're really detailed style guides and templates and everything, which ensure that what I get is hopefully as good as it can be before I start working on it.
Yay, so glad to hear that. Do you have a favorite collection or maybe even a favorite pattern?
Ooh. Wow, okay. I think collection-wise, the thing that really gets me when I see them all finished up are the color schemes that you put together. And so for those, I think the Making Stories and Friends collection, which was it all completely undyed yarns, so naturally colored yarns?
I don't think so. I think it was
pretty
only
much
neutrals.
all sort of neutrals, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not entirely sure if all
really
of them
enjoyed
were
that.
Yeah.
So that was lovely, and I also enjoyed issue 1, which was again lots of neutrals, then with lots of pops of varying shades of green, and that was just so satisfying to me. You can see I'm drawn to color because, yeah, I love color. And then pattern-wise, I just really love complicated jumpers. Even if I never make them, working on them, for tech editing them, I get to go through the whole process anyway, so I can appreciate and say, this is incredible. There are some really good things going on here. And so, yeah, I have a couple in my queue that might happen someday, but we'll see.
There's just not enough time.
I know. There is not enough knitting time, even though, like, I'm knitting pretty much all the time at the moment. There isn't. I can't put my hands through trying to knit all of the things I have ideas for, as well as knitting other people's patterns.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at Claire's comment. Yeah, I think the video, I'm not trying to get the video to work anymore right now because I think it has something to do with the upload rate, and I can't fix this without restarting the stream, which I don't want to do. So I think we'll work with audio for now, and then we'll have you back, Marina, as a guest where we can actually do a proper video thing at some point. Which I'm very sad because, I mean, honestly, like, I don't really know if you can actually see anything, like maybe a still or something. Marina and me, we basically wear the same shade of teal thing without having talked about it before. And I'm always up for things like that. Sorry, that got me a little bit derailed. I want to talk a little bit about the work that we do together, because I think your work is what really makes the patterns as good as they are, and I don't think we talk about it enough. I'm not entirely sure whether everyone actually knows what exactly a tech editor does, and then specifically where you come into our work process. So can you talk to me about what you do as a tech editor in general, and then we'll chat a little bit about how our joint work looks like?
Yeah, sure. So a tech editor takes a hopefully finished written knitting pattern and goes through and doesn't knit the garment or accessory or whatever the pattern is for. The tech editor will go through, read through the pattern, usually accompanied by a spreadsheet, and we'll check all of the instructions, all of the numbers, everything that is in the pattern to make sure that the instructions are clear, correct, and consistent. So we want to make sure that someone picking up the pattern will be able to follow the instructions as given and will get the item that they're expecting from the photos and whatever. And so that involves checking for maths errors to make sure that all of the numbers add up. So that can be quite complex with garments in multiple sizes. You end up with very big spreadsheets. Checking instructions to make sure that everything is included, to make sure that you've got gauge. If you've got multiple different stitch patterns within a pattern, checking that the gauge is listed for those. And working through the instructions to make sure that nothing is missing. And then to ensure that of all of the instructions, they're all phrased in the same way. So with a knitting pattern, you want it to basically be invisible to the knitter. They don't want to notice what the pattern is saying. They want to read it and immediately know what they're doing. And so one of the easiest ways to do that is to ensure that everything is phrased consistently. So, for example, knit to the end of the round. That could be an instruction. That's fine. That's a perfectly sensible instruction. You can also say knit all stitches. It means exactly the same thing. And it's a case of making sure that those two aren't used interchangeably within the pattern, because that's a minor example. It doesn't lead to any confusion or anything, but things like that should be phrased as consistently as possible. So that is a lot of it. So I'll usually work, my personal work I do in Google Docs, which is something I have started since working with you and making stories, because it allows really good version control and prevents having to duplicate a lot of work, which means that I can go through, mark up any errors or anything I think might be clarified, And I'll either, if something is just a very obvious typo, I'll put in a suggested edit, or if I think there might be a mistake but I can't quite work out what's going on, or if I think an instruction needs clarification, I will usually flag that in a comment and say, hey, can you have a look at this? That goes to the designer, they review that, and we'll usually go back and forth a couple of times until the pattern is in a shape that we're both happy with. And then it'll usually get laid out into a nice PDF. Depending on the order the designer likes to do things, it might then be published straight away if it's already been test knitted, or it might then go on to the test knitters. And yeah.
I love how you phrased it, that the pattern should become invisible. I've never thought about it that way, but that's a perfect representation of the work that you do. And it's, I think, such a beautiful way of actually setting maybe a benchmark for a really well-written pattern. I know that the two of us, when we work together, we have this one thing where I think that annoys both of us, and it's when you have a really, really well-written pattern, sometimes what happens is that knitters will email you and will be like, so are you sure that this instruction is correct? And you're just like, yes, just keep knitting. You'll know that it's correct once you've knit past it. And
just trust it. It sounds weird. Like, yes, I'm doing something interesting here, but it's good.
Yeah. I love that expression. So let's talk a little bit about what is so special when you work with us, or well, what is so special makes us sound so special, which I'm not sure we are. But what is the difference when you're working with a publication like ours? I have a few thoughts on that, but maybe you would want to start sharing what you think are the main differences.
Yeah, sure. So with Patterns for Making Stories, well, with independent designers, I'm working directly with the designer. It's their pattern. If they have a style guide, it will be using their style guide. They have sort of complete control over the content and format of the pattern. So when I'm pointing things out, usually things are up to the designer to decide, whereas for Making Stories, I'm in more of an intermediary role between Making Stories, who establish the style guide and the format that everything needs to be in, and the designer, who has done all of the creative work and the maths to put together a really amazing design. So they won't necessarily be writing in the same style and way that they would write their own patterns. And so it's a case of me communicating that to them. So pointing out differences between the pattern and the style guide and saying, hi, I've noticed that you've used this phrasing throughout, however, the Making Stories style guide says that we need to use this phrasing. And that's fine. It's just a slightly different role because I end up being a little bit more instructive rather than sort of saying, how do you want to deal with this? I say, we need to do it this way because this. And I'm also working with a lot of designers at the same time, which can be a lot sometimes. Some patterns are completely breezy, and those are the ones that I barely remember editing because I just fly through them. And then there are ones where there are some more complex issues, some things where I need to work collaboratively with the designer to fix some problems. And that's basically to make sure that at the end of everything, we're putting out the best product that we possibly can. So things like the sizing guidelines aren't necessarily the ones that designers are used to working with. And I think it's easiest when the designer has worked with the sizing guidelines as a starting point, rather than coming up with a design and then trying to mash it into a style template.
Yeah. And I think maybe to also chat a little bit about, or share a little bit about where your work comes in. into the entire process, because I'm not entirely sure how familiar everyone who's viewing is with sort of the general process of putting a publication together. Let me just share a few pointers on that. So usually it takes us a little over a year from the first sort of brainstorming sessions for a collection to the actual publication date. And a big portion of that time is spent on sort of putting together a call for submissions, and then selecting, giving designers the time to send us submissions, selecting the submissions. That's the first step. And then there's a long period of time where the designers who have gotten accepted will be working on their and on their sample knitting. And once they finish the pattern, it will be sent or uploaded to a Google folder, and then it will go to Marina for tech editing. Now, what Marina said earlier, that she's working at the same time with a lot of different designers, is because we try to streamline the process as much as possible. Publication work is a ton of process and project management, and I think it makes everyone's life a lot easier if we didn't have individual deadlines for designers, for example, but we say, hey, you need to deliver your pattern on day X, and on day Y it will go to Marina, and Marina then has 2, 3, 4 weeks for tech editing. And then it will go into test knitting, which will take another 2 to 3 months. And at some point during that time, we'll also have a photo shoot with a finished sample. And then after all of this is done, we'll go into layout and then printing, and then the magazine is published. All of this takes over a year, and it's a little bit like, you know, these tiny little wheels that have to, oh God, I don't really know the English expression for that, but it's basically all of these little puzzle pieces that have to fit together well for it to work properly and in the right sequence. And I think what I really enjoy about the work, not only with any tech editor, but especially with you, Marina, is that you also make us better. Like, we've changed core processes of how we do things based on feedback and reviews that we've done together. And I think I really just appreciate that I have someone who's not just like, yep, this is my job, I'm going through all the patterns, I'm checking that all the stitch counts are correct. But what Marina actually does brilliantly is she's like, yep, this didn't work, so we need to change the process up to XYZ. So, for example, one of the major changes that we've done for issue 5 is that we now say that the pattern writing and the sample knitting can happen at the same time, which we didn't allow for before, because we thought it would make for better patterns if they would be written out beforehand, then they would go through tech editing, then the sample would be knitted from the tech edited pattern. But it turns out that this is a process that doesn't work for a lot of designers. And I think we both are really curious about those patterns for issue 5. Those will be the next ones that will flutter into our inboxes. Because it will be the first time that we will have changed something so significant in our process. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just really, really hate inefficiency. I really do. Anything that makes things more difficult than it has any rights to be needs to be changed. Yeah. And it's partially because I'm a very, very impatient person. It's like, no, we need to work out a way to make this better. And I think that is also from having worked in a bigger company where I was on the production team. I was working on books that were being printed in China and having to be the central point for a lot of different teams pushing together much, much bigger print runs. Yeah. And so any process failure was catastrophic. And so I think I've carried that mindset across, where it's like, no, we can make processes better, and yay, it'll make everything more enjoyable for everyone.
It will. I'll be honest. I think there are designers out there who will never work with us again because they don't enjoy the process.
I think that's got to be the case, because I do think that there are so many different ways to create a knitting pattern, to design one. I mean, some people do a sketch, do a little bit of swatching, and then send it off to a sample knitter, and then that sample knitter works with a ghostwriter. And there are so many different ways to put together a knitting pattern, and not every way of publishing one will suit every designer.
Yeah, that is very true.
But I highly encourage people to try, because the first time I submitted anything was terrifying, and I still haven't had a huge number of things published, but I was much more encouraged to do more designing once I had a pattern published by someone else.
Yeah, and I find it so sad when people get discouraged because their submissions are not accepted, because most of the time, well, sometimes the submission just isn't any good, and I won't lie. Like we get our fair share of not so good submissions, and that's perfectly okay. Sometimes, or honestly, most often, it's just a case of we as the publisher need to put together a collection that will be enjoyable to knit, that will be a good combination of patterns for beginners as well as really, really advanced and complex things, because that's what we're striving for. We want to have a good balance of, pattern complexity available in the magazine. We also want to have a balance of different items to knit, smaller ones, bigger ones. Some knitters love to knit shawls, others love to knit sweaters, others love to knit socks. Some people love to knit everything, so we want to have a good balance. And then it also is a little bit about just the feeling that a collection should convey. It needs to be consistent, it needs to be cohesive. And more often than not, a pattern just doesn't, it's almost as if it doesn't click, and it doesn't have anything to do with a submission. It might fit perfectly well with other, another call for submission that we do, or maybe a different publication, which is also why there's anyone out there who's asking themselves this. Yes, we highly encourage resubmitting submissions either to us or also to other publications. If you've sent us a submission, we've rejected it, don't throw it away. You've put in a lot of work. So go ahead and do something with it. Even if you don't want to self-publish it, or you don't have the time or energy to self-publish it, check if there's maybe something that you can tweak so that it fits well to a different magazine's call for submission.
A pattern I have recently had published in a UK magazine was originally a rejected submission for Making Stories, just for reference, everyone.
See? Wonderful. Okay, let's get into the knitting part. Also, to everyone out there who's listening, if you have any questions for us, so for Marina and me, just comment them, and I think we'd love to answer them. I can see all of the comments, and I'll just pass on your questions to Marina. So if you have any questions about either her work as a tech editor or our work together, just send them our way. And while we wait for questions to come in, would you want to chat a little bit about what you're knitting? You'll have to maybe describe it.
I will describe rather than show, tell and tell. So I'm making a cardigan out of some Erica Knight yarn. The yarn is British Blue 100. I'm working with a nice navy blue. I'm doing a cardigan that at the moment is fairly simple. It's got 2x2 ribbing at the bottom, mostly stockinette, but it's also got some ribbing on the side panels. And it's yarn that has tried to be 2 different jumpers prior to this, that then got frogged and is now becoming a new thing, which I am much further with than I got with either of the previous things, so I think this one might actually stick. And yeah, is going to have some interesting features. It's going to have some grey accents. It's going to be fairly structural in look. So yes, it's one that I hope to publish sort of towards the end of the year, maybe. We'll see.
Ooh, I love Erica Knight British Blue 100. We have a pattern in issue 4 with it, and I think it's really, I think maybe we talked about that. We both think it's a very underrated yarn, didn't we? Maybe I chatted to someone else about it.
But I haven't seen that many people using it, but it's a lovely yarn. It's very, very forgiving. And yeah, nice that it's a British breeds yarn that is actually really quite soft.
Yeah, and I love well, I mean, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case for your project as well, but the one that we had really nice drape, almost like a fluidity to the fabric. It's like an open front cardigan, and we took the most beautiful photos of it, you know, where the model just twirled around and you can just see it fly, and it I really just like the fabric that was created with that yarn.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, so blue face Leicester is quite a long staple usually when you're preparing it into yarn, so it'll be worsted spun, and that will create a lot of drape, like things without like alpaca and stuff. That creates a very drapey fabric because of the long staple length.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on the needles that you would like to share about?
Ooh, well, I have a pair of socks, colourwork socks by my lovely friend Charlotte, who is Stone Knits on Instagram, which I'm going to have to frog because I've just finished the gusset, and it's my first ever pair of colourwork socks, and they do not go over my foot, and that is entirely my fault. For both poor yarn choices and poor float management. So, yeah, they're going to be frogged. It'll be fine. I will cast on a new pair of socks. Probably not those socks again yet, at least, because need to emotionally get over it. However, I've really enjoyed knitting on them. Like, it doesn't feel like time wasted because I've learn something. Like some things you knit and you make a mistake and it's really annoying that you have to rip back. It's like, that was stupid. With this, it's like, no, I've learned something. I've not knit colourwork socks before. I do a lot of colourwork, but not for socks. And now I know better how to do that next time. So that's fine.
Oh, colourwork socks. I've knit one pair of colourwork socks that I then gifted to my sister, who has significantly smaller feet than I do, because
yes,
exactly that issue.
They like when I was holding them and stretching them, they felt like they should fit, but then trying to actually get it on my foot once I got past the heel.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, just no.
Yeah, it's not as stretchy, the fabric. Which makes a lot of sense if you look at colourwork from the wrong side, because it is not stretchy because you have the floats.
Yeah.
We have 2 questions coming in. So Mika asked if a spinning project would have a place in making stories. I would tentatively say yes, without actually being a spinner myself and knowing how something like that could look like. But we're definitely open for other crafts besides knitting. The major holdup why we haven't done anything except for knitting so far is that I tend to stick to what I know, which is knitting. I would, for example, be quite hesitant to take on any crochet projects because that would mean a whole other level of circling back to what Marina does, of tech editing, of developing a language, a style guide around crochet, which I think would add a level of complexity that we currently just can't handle because we're a really, really small team. It's just Claire and me working on it, and then with lovely people like Marina for the different projects. So Mika just sent me an idea and I'll take a look at it. I mean, Marina is a spinner. I'm not entirely sure.
I can take a look.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to submit an article about a spinning project, that would surely be of interest.
Yes, very good idea. So, I mean, in addition, I don't know if you all know this, but in addition to pattern submissions, you can also always send us article or essay or illustration submissions for any upcoming issue. Mars also sent us a question, how much of the math is standardized for things like garment grading, and can a designer get smarter on this if they are willing to study up?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yes.
Cool. Hi, Mars. Also, hi, Mika. Yes, okay, studying up, probably a good idea. Looking at other people's garment patterns, not with a view to copying them, but to seeing how things fit together. Sometimes if you want to do it as a really astoundingly boring exercise, but something that will be really good for you, you can go through a pattern and basically do what a tech editor does and plug numbers from an existing pattern into a spreadsheet and see how they fit together. Obviously, you're going to be missing how those are calculated, but you can see how some of the numbers relate to each other. The grading, so the sizing for making stories is standardized. So there is a sizing chart which includes standard body measurements that the garment or accessory that you're making should fit to. The amount of ease that you include is up to the designer. We do expect an ease recommendation, so that can be a range. So things like, for an oversized jumper, for example, you might say up to 20 centimeters, positive ease recommended. But the grading itself is up to the designer. We expect that to be in fairly good shape by the time it reaches me. Yeah, there are lots of resources on grading. A lot of tech editors have blog posts. I know that Claire Mountain has a series of blog posts on garment construction and grading and loads of interesting stuff there. There are other tech editors who have posted good information, and there are courses out there if you feel like you need a bit more support on that.
I think I mean I've only designed a few patterns myself, and I'm by no means a very proficient designer. I have a couple of books. There's one, I think it's Elizabeth Zimmerman's. It's quite old, where she talks about different garment constructions, everything from top-down raglan to drop shoulder pullover, and it's not like a maths textbook where you get formulas. It's very much text-based, but you can definitely pull out the information on, for example, different ratios, how different, I don't know, if you're doing ribbing, how much you should decrease your stitch count before the ribbing. Alternatively, you can obviously also work with a smaller needle size, but things like that. I can look that up, and I'll add the link to the comment, description thingy down below. But I would also highly recommend everything that Claire Mountain is doing. Her website is under sistermountain.com. She has tons and tons and tons of free blog posts and resources for knitting design, and she does all of her work with a very heavy focus on grading, and she's very good at it, partly also because she studied this. And I think for grading, it's one part is the maths, which if you are working with us, you will get a complete spreadsheet with the nude body measurements that we want you to work with. So you have to make design choices, like Marina said, about ease recommendation, how long do you want the sleeves to be, how long do you want the body to be, yada, yada, yada. But we've done the work for you in terms of figuring out which body measurements to design for. Nevertheless, grading, especially for garments, is also a matter of figuring out how different shapes and proportions will sit on different body types, which is what makes it so complex. right?
Yeah.
So I would definitely say Mars. Claire is a wonderful resource for that, as are a couple of books that I'll share the links to in the down far below.
Also, something, if you are really, really struggling with it and you try and can't get the hang of it, you can get people to grade your garments for you. That's a service that exists. Just for reference. So like, you can use a sample knitter to make your sample, you can hire someone to do your grading, and it might be that they would be you'd have to discuss it with them, but they might be able to talk you through the choices they're making.
Yeah. Which I think if you're looking at it from hey, I want to do knitwear design for the next few years, a smart investment of your time if you can find someone who actually teaches you how to grade, if this is something that you're really interested in, because it will also help you make good choices for your designs. Something that I, for example, pay attention to when I see a submission is, and this is going to sound so ridiculous, but is always the stitch pattern. And I'm interested in, can I see from the submission, if it has a complicated stitch pattern, that the designer understands that this is very complex to grade. Yeah. If you have a cable over, let's say, 30 stitches, and we're asking you to write up a pattern for 8 sizes, chances are it's going to be a hell lot of a ride if you want to grade this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's much, much easier if you're working with, let's say, textured center panel on a reverse stockinette body, grading it up and down. Yeah. So that's also a tip of mine. If you are dipping your toes into garment grading, do yourself a favor and start with something that is maybe not overall texture, maybe has, like stockinette, reverse stockinette as the base, and then you can play around a little bit with the numbers. You can see how it works, and add a little bit of texture here and there. Yeah.
Very valid.
We have another question from Elisa. Elisa asked how you apply to be a test knitter for making stories. So you can go to our website and scroll down, and there's a little link at the bottom that says test knitting, or join us as a test knitter. And just leave your email address there. You'll be automatically added to our test knitting email list. And once a new test knit opens up, we'll send you an email and you can apply.
And before I ever tech edited for making stories, I test knitted for them.
True, and you actually will. The video's not working, so people won't be able to see it. But when we went live, I mean, we're both in t-shirts now because it's very warm. But you actually wore your Mistral sweater that you test knit.
I was wearing, yes, and then it's very warm.
Yeah.
So I took it off.
Yeah. All right, I think we're already almost 15 minutes over my allocated 30 minutes. Let's start wrapping it up. People, if you have any more questions, send them our way. Marina, where can people find more about you? Because Marina, in addition to being an amazing tech editor, as she already sort of lightly touched on it, she has beautiful designs available on Ravelry. She has a couple of really, really gorgeous colorwork hats and also a pair of socks that I actually have lying here and that I wanted to show you, but cannot show you at the moment. But she recently published the Flea socks, which I test knit for her, and they're amazing. You can knit them when your baby is playing, like anywhere, and it will be a lot of fun still. It's a very random thing to say. But she's a really, really good designer. She makes beautiful yarn. The other thing that I actually wanted to show you that is, well, you can see it. I put a few things up on Insta Stories, is a project that I'm knitting in her yarn and her Mended Decay, which is a beautiful, gorgeous 100% wool yarn that Marina dyes. And circling back to what I actually wanted to ask you, So if people are curious about all those aspects of your work, tech editing, designing, yarn making, yarn dyeing, where can they find more about it?
Yeah, well, that's all very kind of you to say. You've been really lovely. So my business name is Marina Skua. So that's MarinaSkua. And so my website is marinaskua.com, all one word. And you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram. And I also have a YouTube channel where I chat a lot about making things and what I'm knitting, and a little bit of seasonal making as well. I'm going to be recording an episode later this week. And yes.
Ooh, and I highly recommend, good that you mentioned the podcast, because I love it. It's one of the very few that I'm still watching, because not a lot of time. And Marina's is a breath of fresh air, and she also will make you very hungry, because she will make pasta she makes pasta in a lot of her podcast episodes. And
yeah, I have been obsessed with the pasta recently, so it's definitely not a cooking podcast, but for me, like slow cooking, like the slow process of cooking comes under the same bracket as like knitting and sewing and other crafts. So it's in there sometimes.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me, Marina. I'm really sorry that the video didn't work. Let's have you back here in a few weeks with an actual video setup so that we can actually show all of the things that we talked about. If that is okay with you, if you would want
that would be lovely. I don't think we're going to run out of things to say.
No, we definitely won't. And I'll also add links to everywhere where you can find Marina in the description box below, so that you can check out her Ravelry store, her beautiful podcast, and her yarn. Alrighty, lovelies.
Thanks so much.
We'll see each other again in 2 weeks, hopefully with video then. Until then, stay safe. I hope you're all healthy. I hope you enjoy beautiful weather wherever you are. And I will chat to you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.